All right, Darksider. So here we go. I need you to help me work through this. And I'm thinking about the whole issue of diversity again, as I just got finished watching the second episode of She-Hulk again, which I didn't enjoy. Really, the show is just underwhelming to me and not done very well. And that's my greatest problem with it. Not the fact that she seems to be pushing feminism or some of the other things that people have problems with, but it did get me thinking about this. With where we are today. And the question is this, Darksider, it's like, is it even possible to have a show today that's truly diverse and people accept the fact that it is diverse? Now, when I say diversity, I'm not just talking about the visual representation of different people groups. So I'm not just talking about having the visual presence of Asians, Iranians, Latin Americans, African Americans, or whoever, whatever other people group in the show. But I'm talking about diversity in the sense where you have those folks in the show and they are also talking about or representing the different issues that might be going on within the subculture of those different groups. So that is a part of the writing. It's a part of the storyline. Is it possible to have those things in a show or a movie today without people's antennas being raised and getting upset and feeling like someone is pushing an agenda on them? Now, here's why I give you that preference. And I'm going to tell you a show that I think actually really does well with this, but I want to know if you know of any shows and movies that actually deal with this subject in a way that doesn't feel pushy or preachy or agenda pushing. So, but here's the thing. Let me know what you think about this, because you might disagree. When you have a certain people group in a show or a certain subgroup or a certain people group or a people group that have a subculture, there are normally things that are commensurate or that go along with that subculture. Normally there are certain tenets of different people groups that go along with a subculture or a certain group of people. Now, obviously, this is not something that goes along with everyone from a certain group. All African Americans don't like the same thing. All Asians or Latin Americans or Iranians or whomever don't like the same thing. So I realize that that's going to be there. So obviously I'm not making a statement to say that every person likes X or every person likes Y. I'm not saying that, but I am saying a general statement. So I'm preferencing it by that. Is it possible to have a TV show or a movie today where you do have these representations from these certain groups, and they are talking about the different struggles that happen within that group, the different cultural aspects of what's happening within those particular groups within the film, and not have it feel pushy? You know, it's a funny thing. I ran a small group not too long ago, years ago, and we did a small group and we were talking about acculturation versus what's the other term? Assimilation. And it was me, I was the counselor, and the group were a bunch of Hispanic kids, and we were talking about that, and we started talking about stereotypes. And they led with the first question, and they said, listen, because I told them, I said, listen, guys, ask me anything you want to ask, and I will try and answer it as much as I can, but I can't say that my statement represents all African Americans. But where I think it's pretty true across the board for a lot of African Americans, at least the ones I know, I will try and answer that question. So the first question they asked me was, is it true, or why does it seem like all African Americans like fried chicken and watermelon? And I was like, look, I'm not gonna lie, like I like a good piece of fried chicken. I like it fried hard too, personally. But I'm not a big fan of watermelon, right? Like I'd much rather cantaloupe. But I do know a lot of people, like a lot of my friends that are Black, they like fried chicken and watermelon. So I can tell you from my experience that that does seem to be something that is really culturally relevant to a lot of African Americans that I know, like it's part of the culture. So my follow-up question to them was, is it true that all Latin American people drink Coronas? Because a lot of what I've seen is I've seen a lot of folks from Latin America buying and drinking Coronas. And they laughed and they were like, well, I'm not gonna lie, my uncle does love Coronas. I'm not gonna lie, I got a lot of friends that drink Coronas. So I'm giving you that example to say, for example, those might be things that might be part of the culture. And if you have a movie or a film that has these diverse people group in it, and within that movie or film, you're also representing the different things that might be cultural aspects of who they are, and also the different things that they're dealing with in a culture, can you do something like that without it seeming pushy, without it seeming preachy? Or are we in a culture, or are we in a place today where you can't do that? And if that is the case, whose problem is that? Like, is it the producer's problems, or is it something that we should look at and not necessarily get so offended by? And listen, I'm not trying to preach to you to tell you to feel one way or the other. I don't do that. You feel how you feel and express it. Or is it something that we should see and kind of be able to look at and not necessarily get offended or riled up at, but just say that, okay, this is part of their culture and we're just still enjoying the whole film or the TV show, but we're seeing different aspects of cultural diversity within the show, within the characters from those different cultural groups. That might sound a little confusing. If it is, let me know. But my question is it possible to have a show that's enjoyable, that doesn't feel like it's browbeating you with these issues, but they're clearly elements within the show? Now, I can think of a show that really was a launching pad for this channel that does that very well, and that's Into the Badlands. And Into the Badlands is amazing, and if you haven't seen it, you got to make sure you check it out. But I'm thinking about the diversity of that show, but the show never felt preachy. It was always so good, and it's not like they did not deal with certain issues in the show, but it never felt preachy. As a matter of fact, I happen to know because when I spoke to Daniel Wu, who plays Sonny in the show, he told me that they purposefully tried to have diverse representation in the show, and they also dealt with certain issues in the show. The Widow is a good example, and a lot of the OG Darksiders know who the Widow is. General, I know my man General, like that's his girl. But she dealt with a lot of stuff in the show. She dealt with the whole idea that the men were not respecting her as a Baron. She dealt with the whole idea that they were always trying to usurp her authority and take her territory. It's interesting because a lot of the protectors of the Widow were men, right? And she definitely was the head of that. And she definitely was a very, very strong woman. So those themes in that show were addressed, but yet the show never felt preachy. How did they pull that off? That's a plug to see Into the Badlands if you haven't. And she was a beast, and boy, could she fight. And there was a whole bunch of dudes in that show that could not go toe to toe with her. She was definitely in the top 3 of fighters in that show. She was a beast. So how does that show pull off something like that successfully, where there is visual diversity, there is diversity within the writing of the script, but it never feels pushy? That's the question. Can it be done today? If you've seen shows where it has been done, name the movie, name the TV show. Is it possible that when we see these things, we should just not allow ourselves to get so upset? Well, we should just accept the fact that you're seeing someone from a certain background or a cultural aspect, and they are also reflecting that culture within the script, and that's okay? Or is it impossible? Maybe we're just in a place right now where if you see anything like that, that looks like it's addressing anything from a cultural or diversity aspect, that you feel browbeaten. And instead, what you want for enjoyment is just not to have those things touched at all, just to tell a story that doesn't really deal with culture in any kind of way, which really is impossible. That cannot happen without telling a story, because all stories are a reflection of some cultural aspect. It's just from what angle that culture is being expressed. That's just the way that it is, because you're telling a story in which people are congregated together, and anytime there is a congregation of people, there is culture of some aspect being explained in a TV or movie show. Them's the facts. So that's my thought. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Thank you for listening. Love you guys. See you on the next video. Peace, Darksiders.